So something you said earlier, though, that I almost went down this path, and I'm like, I'm gonna unpack the technology first. But you talked about how essentially what you're doing is doing what an analyst would do. And I talk a lot about the fact that from an employee standpoint, there's a lot of fear going around the world right now around what does this mean for, because maybe if you're an analyst listening to this and you're going, wait a minute, this is doing my job for me. But I don't see it that way. But I am curious, like, how does this end up working when you work with an organization? Because I can see people going, wait, you're just basically getting an AI model to do my job for me.
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely be worried in the medium term. I wouldn't be worried in the short term. We're certainly not going to replace analysts with our technology, and LLMs aren't going to replace analysts with their existing technology. And I would say that we're sort of approaching the analytical problem from two different directions when it comes to LLMs and us. And what we can do is because we're custom and because we're building these models ourselves, we can be 100% accurate. We can, balance all the factors that we put into the system perfectly, right? So, but the problem is that the number of factors is limited, right?
Yeah.
So we could say, all right, we're going to balance, let's just say your sales in this particular category, but weight it by how much these sales make up your total sales, right? So if we're trying to find what's the most interesting thing that happened, maybe this particular product was up 80%, but it's 1% of sales, right? So it's like, okay, how do we balance that out, right?
Yep.
But you could imagine something where within a company, you have, you always do a huge Memorial Day sale or something, right? And so that's another factor too, right? If we're going to say like, oh, this is a big increase and we want to showcase it, we have to think about, okay, well, this is our
you have to look at those other factors to go, yeah, there was a big increase, but we also ran our annual Black Friday sale. So of course we had a big increase. So that's not front page headline news.
Exactly. And maybe actually we need to compare this year to last year over the same time period. Whereas normally we're just comparing this week to last week. Right.
Yep.
And so now that's something that we can put into our system, right? We can put that into there, but at some point we're not going to have all the factors, right? Whereas a human analyst can do all the factors. Right? So, but then from an LLM standpoint, it kind of can do all these factors. It just can't necessarily do them well, right? So it can kind of, because it's generalizable, it can think through all these different things. Like if you asked an LLM, hey, is this a scenario where you'd want to analyze something differently, right? It could probably actually think through that, but it can't actually put that all together, into an actual report. So human beings can do both of those things right now, right? Where you have the ability to be sort of think in true concepts, right? Where it's like, this is a sale, this has this effect, it's this time period. We can have these sort of discrete things that we can mash together in a very predictable way to come up with the correct answer, like not hallucinate, right?
Yep.
And also have the flexibility. So for right now, there's definitely a lot of things that we can do, but we don't have the ability to take into account every factor, right? We can only sort of model the key factors, which is obviously very helpful. And in certain situations, can even be kind of the whole enchilada, right? Depending on how many factors there are. But most human analysts, I think, are in situations where ahead of time, you don't even know all the factors that are going to go into it. And so you have to have like the flexible human intelligence to be like, hey, something came up and it's actually, it's Debbie in accounting that's out sick, or something. And so this is why this is, all these different things that are not part of the data are things that human analysts can still provide value for. Now, eventually, if you have sort of the merging of the LLMs and kind of what we're doing, where you have LLMs that can think in these discrete concepts that are sort of manipulable, right? Where they can take a concept and just sort of look at it from a different angle or apply it to something in the same way that human beings have, then you have sort of general AI. But then, if you're an analyst, like who cares? Like everybody's out of work at that point. So I don't know.
Well, and what's interesting about it though, and no, but I like talking about these things because to me, when I listen to a lot of this, because I spend so much time studying human behavior and psychology, I know people's like initial reactions. And so as soon as you said it does what an analyst does, I immediately went, someone somewhere will hear that and go, this thing does what I can do. But as I listen to you describe it, it absolutely is changing the role of the analyst over time. It absolutely is. But in many ways, a lot of what you described is that, well, who's setting the parameters? Who has that knowledge to be able to go, this is it? And that, again, is not static. That's the other thing people don't take, at least not for good analysts. Good analysts are adapting and learning, hey, what's the ecosystem of the organization? What environmental factors are happening that we need to account for? Things like this, so that you're constantly tweaking and manipulating and going, hey, you know what, we need to change this kind of a thing. But you're actually interacting with that and then having that human oversight of, well, only you know the Debbie in accounting had this change that affected this type of, that's such contextual information.
Yeah.
And AI, it's terrible at context.
Yeah.
It's awful at context. It does not have that. And so I see how it absolutely, if you're an analyst and all your job is to go run the report, get the information, plug it into a thing, it is going to disrupt that in a sense over time. But do you become less relevant? No, I think if anything, the value you bring actually becomes more relevant, but you need to be focusing on those other areas. If you're trying to master your skill of creating the most intriguing headlines out of the data, you might want to rethink where you're investing your time and energy.
Absolutely. And one of the things that we've done with our technology, because we have it think conceptually, it allows it to sort of dive into any aspect of the data. And we have I think I showed you the interactive demo that we have, where you can have a report and it could have a sentence that's interesting. We think, oh gosh, like this number moved a lot. Like it might just mention that as a piece of context for the larger point, but you might say as an analyst, hey, I want more information on that. Well, with our system, you can actually literally double click on a sentence and get a brand new report just on that topic. And so I think a lot of what we can do is help an analyst essentially navigate through the numbers. They can get the top line information. And then if anything else is interesting, they can dive into that and get a report. But then we can literally, drag and drop a sentence into a chart or into a table to get the raw numbers behind it. So that we can say, all right, I now actually want to see this for myself. But it's a way of sort of choosing your own adventure with analytics that allows you to very quickly both get the top line, sort of here's the key information that you need to know from the computer, but then also be able to, keep going into that. And then when you're actually making the report to the higher ups, be able to add those human touches, right? Where the things that only or even saying, okay, I'm going to pull this paragraph out of this report and this paragraph out of this other report and assemble it myself because I know that these are the
actual. Well, and I was just that was the second half that you led right into it, which is also the fact earlier we said any organization today, literally, it doesn't matter how small you are. Like my dad and mom and my brother and my sister have a tiny funeral home, small chain of funeral homes up in northern Minnesota. They create more data than they know what to do with.
Yep.
So any organization, you don't have enough analysts to even look at what you have and make sense of it.